On the 9th of April, Jacksonville, Florida will host UFC 273, an unmissable event with a stacked main card featuring not one, but two title fights and a possible welterweight #1 contender fight. Kia ora whanau, this is Kyle from the Casual Corner, brought to you by the Combat Sports Network, and today we're going to be previewing UFC 273. What fight are you most looking forward to? Do you think we're going to see either title change hands? Do you think Burns has what it takes to stop Chimaev's title charge dead in its tracks? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get cracking. Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev. Number 11 ranked welterweight Khamzat Chimaev is taking a break from serenading new boyfriend Darren Till to make his highly anticipated return to the octagon to face off against number 2 ranked Brazilian Gilbert Burns in a fight that, should he come out victorious, puts Khamzat firmly in the title picture. Khamzat's journey to 273 has been nothing short of astronomical. In the space of 2 years, Chimaev has risen from an unknown to a highly touted contender who a lot of people think has got what it takes to knock pound for pound #1 welterweight champion Kamaru Usman off of his perch. Not only that, he's even being considered as the man to finally dethrone Israel Adesanya and claim the middleweight title. Champ Chimaev. So, why are people so excited about the rise of Khamzat Chimaev? The Chechen-born Swede has a perfect 10-0 record coming into this fight and has finished every single one of those fights by stoppage, all within 2 rounds. In 10 fights, he's spent under 35 minutes in the cage. He came into the UFC with a 6-0 record, having fought at both welterweight and middleweight for Middle Eastern MMA promotion Brave Combat Federation, winning 4 of his fights by TKO and 2 by technical submission. Khamzat made his UFC debut on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi at middleweight against Welshman John Phillips, who had lost 3 of his last 4 fights in the UFC. But even so, Chimaev's absolute dominance over Phillips raised some serious eyebrows. Khamzat outstruck Phillips 124-2 before submitting him by a dash choke just over a minute into the second round. It's worth noting that this fight was so one-sided that one judge scored the first round 10-7 to Khamzat. Yikes. Chimaev didn't fancy leaving Fight Island, and a mere 10 days after brutalising Phillips, he dropped a weight class to take on his next victim, Rhys McKee, in an equally brutal and one-sided showcase in which Khamzat took McKee down and smashed his face for 2.5 minutes before the ref mercifully stepped in to end the contest. 56 days later, Chimaev made his way to Las Vegas and jumped up to middleweight once again to take on 44-fight veteran Gerald Meerschaert, who he flatlined 17 seconds into the first round. It was at this point that people started to realise that the hype was real. After battling COVID and missing out on a fight with Leon Edwards, Khamzat returned to Fight Island to face off against Li Jingliang at UFC 267 in the hopes of securing a spot in the welterweight rankings. This fight was supposed to be a tough test for Khamzat, with many fight fans fancying Jingliang to cause an upset. Not a chance. Chimaev toyed with Li, lifting him up, carrying him like a little orphan child across the cage and having a nice little chinwag with UFC President Dana White before chucking him down, taking his back, smashing his face and choking him unconscious, leaving his eyes rolling in the back of his head. After the fight, Chimaev called out a slew of ranked welterweights and one brave soul answered the call. Former welterweight title challenger Gilbert Burns has been fighting in the UFC for 8 years and has amassed an impressive 13-4 record in the organisation with a 20-4 record overall. After a fairly successful run at lightweight, Gilbert returned to welterweight in August 2019 with a unanimous decision victory over Aleksei. He'd then go on a bit of a tear with notable victories over welterweight mainstays Gunnar Nelson and Damian Maia, beating the latter by TKO in the first round, and former welterweight champion Tyron Woodley, who he beat via unanimous decision, earning himself a Performance of the Night bonus. Burns had worked his way up to the top of the welterweight pile and was awarded with a title fight against champion Kamaru Usman, who was looking to make his 3rd successful title defence. Gilbert thought he had the title firmly in his grasps after landing a huge overhand right to the champion's temple, dropping him to his knees just over 30 seconds into the fight. Halfway through the second round, Usman landed a well-timed counter overhand right, dropping Burns. Usman came out in the third in full control. He switched stances to southpaw and landed a heavy jab, flooring the challenger and dropping some nasty ground and pound before Herb Dean stepped in to call off the fight and end Gilbert Burns' hopes of becoming a champion, for the time being. Gilbert Burns bounced back with an impressive unanimous decision win over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson just a few months later at UFC 264. Gilbert Burns is the plus 400 underdog going into this fight, with Khamzat being the minus 600 favourite at the time of recording. Do you think the bookies have this one right, or do you think Khamzat is going to come unstuck against a higher calibre opponent? Let us know how you think this is going to play out in the comments below. Aljamain Sterling vs Petr. The former Bantamweight champion and current interim champion Petr looks to regain and unify the Bantamweight title when he takes on the very much disputed champion Aljamain Sterling. Petr garnered an impressive 8-1 record on the Russian circuit, only losing a split decision in his 6th fight. He made his UFC debut in June 2018, earning an impressive knockout in the first round. He'd go on a 6-fight win streak in the UFC, beating John Dodson and Jimmy Rivera by decision before knocking out former WEC Featherweight champion Uriah Faber with a beautiful head kick. Jan was then given a shot at the vacant Bantamweight title against former UFC Featherweight champion and future Hall of Famer Jose Aldo, who he finished late in the 5th and final round by TKO to become the undisputed UFC Bantamweight champion. Jan was on a 10-fight win streak coming into his first title defence against Sterling, who himself was on an impressive 5-fight win streak. Jan was coming into the 4th round of his first title defence with the upper hand, having clearly won both the 1st and 3rd round, showing that he had the superior stand-up after dropping Aljo with a big overhand right and later with a well-timed leg kick. Somewhat surprisingly, he also showed that he had the edge as far as wrestling was concerned, having taken Sterling down multiple times during the fight and threatening submissions. With 40 seconds remaining in round 4, Jan forced Aljo onto one knee in the clinch and drove his knee into his grounded opponent's head, causing the fight to be stopped, with Aljo being declared the winner by disqualification and having bantamweight gold draped over his shoulder. UFC Bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling holds a 20-3 record. He came into the UFC with an 8-0 record and made his UFC debut in February 2014 at UFC 170, beating Cody Gibson by unanimous decision. He'd win his next 3 fights, finishing all 3 opponents before taking the first L of his career by split decision to Brian Caraway. He'd take 2 more L's in his next 4 fights before regaining his momentum and picking up 5 straight wins against some top contenders, including Pedro Munoz and Corey Sandhagen, earning himself a shot at the UFC Bantamweight gold. As mentioned, Jan seemed to have the upper hand before the ill-fated 4th round. However, Aljo definitely had his moments, taking the champ down and landing a nice flying knee. He had won the 2nd round on all 3 of the judges' scorecards. So, that 4th round. Aljo was on the back foot for most of the round, being outstruck and outgrappled. After kinda landing a head kick, Sterling was pushed to his knee and then bang! A swift knee to the dome, followed by what some fans believe to be an Oscar-worthy performance from Aljo. Regardless, the knee was illegal and earned Jan a disqualification. Aljamain Sterling was awarded the win and became the new Bantamweight champion. Initially, he wasn't accepting of the belt, leaving it on the octagon floor, but following the fight, he's fully embraced his title and his apparent heel turn. Aljamain Sterling is the plus 285 underdog going into this championship rematch, with Jan opening as the minus 350 betting favourite at the time of recording. Who are you putting your hard-earned money on? Do you think Jan is the rightful champion and will prove it once and for all, or do you think Sterling is going to underline his time on the bantamweight throne? Let us know how you think this is going to play out in the comments below. Alexander Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. Fan favourite and somewhat cult figure Jung Chang-sung, better known as the Korean Zombie, is the number 4 ranked UFC featherweight and holds a 17-6 pro MMA record. He made his full UFC debut in March 2011 after losing his 2 previous fights in WEC with a twister submission victory in the 2nd round against Leonard Garcia. This was the first time this submission had ever been done in the UFC, and in the 11 years since, it's only been repeated once. The Korean Zombie would knock out Mark Hominick in the 1st round in his next fight before defeating Dustin Poirier by Darce choke in their headlining main event scrap. After 3 impressive straight finishes, Sung was given his first shot at gold against the featherweight king Jose Aldo at UFC 163 on enemy turf in Rio de Janeiro, eventually losing the fight by TKO in the 4th round. In 2014, Korean Zombie announced that he would be starting his mandatory military service in his home country of South Korea, with the aim of returning to MMA once the 2-year conscription was completed. He'd returned to the octagon in February 2017, headlining at UFC Fight Night against Dennis Bermudez, knocking his opponent out in the 1st round and earning his first performance of the night bonus. In November 2018, the Korean Zombie would again headline at UFC Fight Night against Yair Rodriguez. Going into the 5th round, Jung was up 3-1 on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards and was well on his way to earning a victory after a close 5th round. But with 1 second remaining in the fight, Rodriguez threw a Hail Mary elbow, knocking Zombie out cold and earning a highlight reel victory. Between then and now, the Korean Zombie would win 3 of his next 4, losing via unanimous decision to Brian Ortega. Volkanovski was due to defend his title in a trilogy fight against foe Max Holloway, but luckily for the Korean Zombie, Holloway was forced to withdraw due to injury, giving him his second shot at the featherweight title. Featherweight champion Alexander the Great Volkanovski holds a 23-1 record, with his only loss coming 9 years ago in his 4th pro bout on the Australian regional circuit. Since then, he's gone on an unprecedented 20-fight winning streak, beating the likes of Jamie Mullarkey, Shane Young, Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo. After 7 straight wins in the UFC, Volkanovski was given a shot at gold. He'd take on Max Holloway at UFC 249 for the Featherweight Championship, winning by unanimous decision in an absolutely outstanding fight and performance. 7 months later at UFC 251, Volkanovski would make his first title defence against former champ Holloway. This fight was an absolute banger and a lot closer than the first fight, but the end result was the same, with Volky Boy coming out victorious and retaining his title via split decision. This outcome has been the subject to some debate, with a massive amount of fans, MMA media members and fighters coming out to say that they thought Max Holloway should have won. Volkanovski was scheduled to make his second title defence against Brian Ortega at UFC 260. However, the fight was cancelled due to COVID-19, with Volkanovski confirming via Twitter that he had tested positive. Shortly after, it was announced that Brian Ortega and Volkanovski would be the coaches for the Ultimate Fighter 29, with the 2 coaches facing off at UFC 266 for the UFC Featherweight Championship. Volkanovski won the fight by unanimous decision and retained his title, and was praised for his toughness and determination, having escaped multiple submission attempts during the fight, one of which I'm sure most fans watching were sure was a fight ender. Volkanovski is a massive -800 betting favourite going into this 3rd title defence, with a Korean Zombie being the +470 underdog. Who do you think's going to take this one? Do you think the underdog might end up on top and finally capture gold? Do you think Volk is going to cement himself on the featherweight throne? Let us know how you think this is going to play out in the comments below. So there you have it, our preview of UFC 273. Let us know how you think these fights are going to go down in the comments below, and be sure to like the video and subscribe to the Combat Sports Network. Give CSN a follow on Instagram and Meta, and check out our website www.combatsportsnetwork.co.nz and sign up for access to a plethora of homegrown combat sports events and fights from around the world. I'm Kyle, this is the Combat Sports Network. Until next time, ta-ra.